seconds.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to day 4 of AMA Junior Camp. Once again, I am Kyle Thiede, the education specialist here at AMA, and once again, here to help me with this morning's project is the education director at AMA, Kyle Jarris.
Hey, good to see you again, Kyle.
Good morning. How are you?
And man, I'm doing great. I'm excited about this project. Like, this is going to be a really fun one.
I'm really excited about this one too. This is probably the one I've been looking forward to the most this week.
It's a good one. I mean, you get to have there's an aha moment. You'll end up with something that flies really well. It's a lot of fun. Now, if you got a flight pack, of course, everything you need is in the flight pack. So we're going to have a great time. But Kyle T, could you inform everybody what they might need if they don't have a flight pack?
Yep, because this project probably uses the most unusual items. So there are a few things that you're going to want to make sure you have right in front of you before you get started with making this project. So some of the more common things that you'll need are some tape, you'll need some paper clips, and you'll need a pair of scissors, just like we've used for a lot of the projects this week. But you are also going to need a stick of balsa wood, and you're also going to need some competition rubber. So those things can be found at a hobby store. And you want to make sure that you get the right sizes. So for the balsa wood, what you're going to need is a piece of wood that is 1/8 inch by 3/8 inch thickness and cut down to a length of about 7 inches. All right, so I'll say that again, 1/8 by 3/8, cut down to 7 inches. So that is what you should have when you're done with that, what Kyle is just holding up there. And you're also going to need some competition rubber. FAI competition rubber is the official name for it. You can get it in a lot of different sizes. I recommend getting either 1/8 inch or 3/16 inches. Those are the two most common. You can get either one or the other, or get both. Competition rubber is very, very inexpensive. And last but not least, you will need one of these things. This is our propeller. Well, we're going to be using it as something a little bit different than a propeller, but the one that we're going to be using is about 6 inches in diameter. They sell these in all different sizes and colors. The one in a flight pack that you guys, for those of you who have flight packs, you'll have a 6-inch diameter one that is colored blue. But for those of you who are going to be purchasing these materials on your own, you might have one that's a slightly different size or a slightly different color. For example, we've got one right here that is red. And this is what we're going to be building. This is what we're going to be building out of materials that you either have in the flight pack or if you want to gather them on your own.
And honestly, if you've got a glider, like a Gwillows plane or something like this, you've got a lot of the things you need to make this work at home. Don't throw the wings in such a way. It's still a great glider. You can pull those off and use this as part of the project or part of this project, though. So be creative, and you'll be able to find some good stuff to make this work.
Yeah, this project is great because there are lots of opportunities to be creative with it. And there's a couple things that make this different from the projects that we've done so far this week. So we mentioned very briefly yesterday when we were talking about how airfoils work, we were talking about how airfoils are used by both airplanes and also by helicopters and other rotorcraft. So that is actually what we are going to be working on today. This is not a model airplane. This is a model rotorcraft. This propeller is actually going to be used as a rotor, which is something a little bit different than a propeller, a little bit different from a wing. It kind of combines the two together. And also, pretty neat little milestone we're reaching here. This is going to be our first flying model that is actually powered, right? Our paper airplane that we made on Monday and the glider that we made on Tuesday, those don't fly under their own power. You have to either throw them or launch them with a slingshot. But this thing can actually fly under its own power. It has a source of energy that it uses to generate that lift, which, as you can probably tell, is the rubber band. So a lot of really cool things going on with this model. So let's go ahead and get started with it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Project 4 envelope here for those of you who have flight packs. And this is going to contain all the materials or some of the other materials that you're going to need in addition to the stuff that is in your toolkit. All right. So I believe that the piece of balsa that I mentioned, the 1/8 by 3/8 by 7-inch piece of balsa wood, is in the project envelope. So you're going to want to get this out here. And your propeller is going to be in the toolkit. So we've got both of these items here, and these go together pretty simply. All you've got to do is take one end of the balsa and the propeller and just slide it right on nice and snug.
Now, if it's a little bit too snug, if it doesn't quite fit, you can take your balsa and, on the end, just kind of press it down gently on this end here and kind of form that so that it should be able to compress and fit right over there. If it gets really bad, you could potentially take some sandpaper and scrape it down, but they should fit really well.
Yeah. Balsa is a soft wood. It's really easy to work with.
Yeah.
All right. Then we're going to need a paper clip. And hopefully you guys haven't used all 100 of your paper clips so far this week in your experimenting and in your trials with your other models, as we need just one for this project here. And unlike the catapult glider, we are not going to break this one in half, but we are going to bend it into two separate halves. So once again, there's the outer loop here that's bigger than the inside loop. I'm just going to take that smaller inside loop and just kind of slide it out and bend it so that we've got this kind of angled shape here. You don't want to break it in half. If you do break it in half, that's why you got all these spares here. So we've got kind of this V-shaped, or actually I guess it's a check mark. It's one side smaller than the other. So we've got this kind of check mark shape here out of our paper clip, and this is going to be our motor hook. All right. So what I'm going to do now is take my balsa wood with the propeller on one end, and I'm going to take the smaller side of the paper clip, the smaller loop, and I'm going to lay it flat along the balsa wood so that the larger hook is sticking off the side of the balsa that the propeller hook is off. So the propeller hook is right here, and it's on this side of the wood, and that's also where this large paper clip hook is going to be hanging to. You don't want them on opposite sides of each other. So once you have your paper clip all lined up, we're just going to use some masking tape to secure it in place.
Now, how much masking tape should they be used? Like, I grabbed a ton just to make sure that it doesn't slide off. It's like, obviously, there's a balance there between weight and strength. I don't know that I'm going to use all this, I'll be honest. But you want to use just enough to keep it secure, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I've only got about maybe 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. Not very much. Just enough to wrap around a couple times here and make sure that that hook is nice and firmly in place.
Good deal. Because like any flying object, any aircraft, you want to fly with enough strength and durability that it can maintain flight, obviously, but you don't want to add so much weight that it's being dragged down, because gravity is the enemy of lift. So, and thrust.
Exactly. All right. So this is actually this is all there is to the airframe. We've got our motor stick here. We've got the propeller, and we've got the motor hook here. So now it's time to actually add our power source. But this is really all there is to the airframe. So that's pretty simple. Even easier than the little Gillows glider that Kyle showed at the beginning there. But what you're going to need for the power source is you're going to need to get out this little yellow envelope for those of you with a flight pack. If you don't have a flight pack, this is where you'll get out that competition rubber that I mentioned. FAI competition rubber. 1/8 inch and 3/16 inch thicknesses are probably the best ones to work with.
Now, if you've got a flight pack, you've got both. And the reason for that is obviously you want to be able to experiment, have fun, learn from both different types, which is going to work better for you.
Yep, it's just about to say that we've provided those of you with flight packs with both types of rubber, and you can choose which one you want to work with. So you'll see that they're tied together here inside the envelopes. You can go ahead and undo that knot and get these two strands separate from one another. And you can tell if you look at them very closely that one is slightly thinner than the other. The thinner one obviously is the 1/8 inch, and the thicker one is the 3/16 inch, for those of you who know your fractions. I'm going to start off with the 1/8 inch. So I'm going to set the 3/16 one off to the side here. I'm going to take my strand of rubber, and we need to make this into a loop. So I'm just going to take both ends of it and I'm going to tie them together here. A simple double knot is really all you need. And if you're confused about how to do a double knot, imagine that you're tying your shoes and you're just doing the first step twice in a row. The part of tying your shoes before you get to the bunny ears, just do that twice, if that makes sense. How many different ways are there to tie your shoes? I'm sure there's lots. I learned the bunny ears method.
Yeah, I learned the bunny ears. That's the best way, I think.
So if you need mom or dad to help you with tying a knot, completely understand. It took me a while to learn how to tie knots when I was younger, but this one is just a simple double knot. And if you get it nice and snug there, we should have a loop of rubber that we can use for our power source in our Rotorcraft. And the way we're going to attach it here is we are going to take the end with the knot. So there'll be a knot here. And if you want to cut, I'm going to cut the little extra strands off here just so they're not getting in the way.
Saving weight.
There you go. All right, so I've got my loop of rubber here. I'm going to take the end with the knot, and I'm going to slide that knot onto the motor hook that we made out of the paper clip, just so that it's right up there against the clip. And I'm going to take the other end of the rubber band, and I'm going to just loop it around the motor hook on the propeller. All right. And just like that, we've got a flying machine. All right, we've got a Rotorcraft. So we've got our power source, we've got our body, we've got the rotor. It's going to fly like this. We've got a hook to keep the motor in place. So there is no reason to think that this shouldn't fly exactly the way we want it to fly. So to wind this up, you're going to need to turn the propeller counterclockwise. So if you're looking at the stick from the front, you're turning it clockwise. Clockwise. There. You can see how I'm doing it correctly there.
There was a comment earlier that said theirs came pre-knotted. Now, my guess is that both of those types of rubber bands are tied together on that initial one. So you'll want to untie those first and then use one or the other, the 1/8 or the 3/16 inch rubber. And yes, it is a square knot, just 2 square knots. Or, what you can also do is take your ends and just put those together and then just loop that around like so. And that becomes a knot that holds that loop as well. So either way works just fine. Everybody in pre-flight has their own preference for how they do their knots. So you almost can't do it wrong as long as it stays together.
There you go. And speaking of knots, you can kind of see I'm winding up my rubber band right now. And when you wind up competition rubber, you'll see that it starts forming these little knots kind of along the length of the rubber. You can see there's a few right there, a few right there. And a good way to make sure that you've got enough turns in your rubber for a good test flight is you just want to have those knots along the full length of the rubber. And if you keep winding it up, you'll get a second layer of knots and a third layer of knots. We don't want quite that many for a first test flight. Just one full row of knots should be enough. That'll be a good ballpark number of turns in the rubber where it'll give you a good idea of how well this thing flies. So I'm going to go ahead and stop winding it right about there. And we'll see how this thing works when we took it out for a test flight. All right, well, that didn't work out so well. Let's try it again. So you can see when you want to launch this thing, what you want to do is let the propeller start spinning first and then let it go.
Oh, I wonder what happened.
But it doesn't really seem like it's wanting to fly very high, is it?
How can we fix that?
Well, let's see what we can. Let's think about it. Let's see what we can do to fix that. So we mentioned yesterday that there's a lot of different principles that are working on a flying machine when we try to make it fly, right? We talked about the Bernoulli principle, obviously, about how the different air pressures above and below an airfoil create a lifting force. But we also talked about Isaac Newton and how air can work in ways that kind of reflect Newton's laws of motion. Now, for those of you who maybe are a little bit young to have learned about Isaac Newton, he came up with 3 laws of motion that explain how things move around. And the third law of motion is the one that we really want to focus on here. I'm sure you can learn about the other 2. But the third law of motion is the one that's really important here. And the third law of motion is that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you push against something, that thing is going to push right back against you. All right. That's how rockets fly. That's how a lot of things work. I mean, that's how everything works. That's how everything moves. If you push against something, it is going to push back with exactly the same amount of force. All right. So what does that have to do with our rotorcraft here? Well, the rotor is spinning in one direction, and it's creating a lot of force going in that direction. So the stick attached underneath the rotor is, if you watch the video clip very closely, we're playing in slow motion, you can see that the motor stick is actually spinning in the opposite direction as the rotor. Watch very carefully. You can kind of see that I'll let the rotor start spinning, and I'll let go, and the stick is spinning in the opposite direction.
It's trying to find that equilibrium.
Exactly. Equal and opposite reaction. So the fact that that's going on means that this thing can't fly. This thing is not really going to go anywhere. So how do we fix that? Well, we're going to do what real helicopters do, and we're going to add a strong stabilizing force. We're going to add a stabilizer. So we mentioned earlier on this week when we made our catapult glider that you wanted to hang on to your extra foam plate or the scraps that you cut out of your foam plate when you cut out the triangle for your glider. And what you can use that foam plate for is you can cut out a stabilizer shape. All right. And this is your chance to be creative. You can make your stabilizer any size and any shape that you want. We really want you to experiment here and see what works and what you need to change to get your rotorcraft to fly successfully. So with the plate that I had here in the studio, I cut out kind of a small, goofy looking shape here. It almost looks kind of like a weird bird or bat wing.
I love it.
But what you want to do is you're just going to take, once you have a stabilizer cut out of your plate or really any kind of material that you have on hand. For those of you without flight packs, you might have cardstock at home. You might have cardboard. You might have paper. You might have aluminum foil or any other kind of material. And you can cut out just whatever stabilizer size and shape you think will help out your rotorcraft. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that stabilizer shape that I cut out right there along the motor stick. I'm going to use my tape, and I'm just going to put it right there in place. And we're going to see if we can put together something that flies a little bit more impressively.
And just like, helicopter, a full-scale helicopter would be using, or even RC helicopter would be using that as a counter-rotating force. It uses another propeller to push back against that force at the end of a boom, so it has leverage as well. What we're doing is we're creating that leverage using the air pressure as it tries to spin. It's going to be pushing against that air, which will slow it down. This is going to keep spinning fast. This will spin really slowly at that point if we do it right, which will allow it to fly. So that's why helicopters can fly in a straight line without slowly spinning around.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what the tail rotor on a helicopter is for. And if you've ever seen a helicopter that has two big rotors on top, the reason it has two big rotors is, well, A, so it can lift more, but also one of them is spinning in one direction and the other is spinning in the opposite direction. So that equal and opposite reaction, which in the case of a helicopter, that force is called torque. The torque from the two rotors that are spinning in opposite directions that cancels each other out. And so the helicopter pilot doesn't have quite as much to worry about in that case. Helicopters are very, very difficult flying machines to fly because of this.
A lot that goes into it.
Yeah, there is a lot that goes into it. They're much more complicated than airplanes. Helicopters took a lot longer to be invented than airplanes did, or practical helicopters, at least ones that could carry people and fly safely, took a lot longer to be developed and invented than airplanes.
But they have a lot of benefits too. They can get into a lot of places and do a lot of tasks that fixed wing aircraft is hard to do. That's why they were invented. That's why we thought about ways to make it work.
Exactly. They can take off and land straight up and down. They can hover in place. They can do all sorts of things that regular airplanes just can't do. But it's not easy. It is definitely not easy. I think there's an old joke with helicopter pilots that helicopters really aren't flying machines at all. They're just a bunch of flying machine parts that are flying in formation. So, but let's see if we can So let's see if this stabilizer that we've added on to our Rotorcraft is going to make much of a difference. So I've actually built one out of the kit before that we demonstrated at that flying site, and I used a slightly different material on that Rotorcraft. I used actually I made the stabilizer out of a piece of cardstock that came from a manila folder. So whoa.
Let's see how that one works.
So let's see.
Whoa, nice.
All right.
Done.
Now that is a little bit more of a flying machine than what we had before. So let's see if we can see that from a different angle. There we go. Let's go back to the instant replay.
There it goes.
And there it goes. So you can see that the stick is still wanting to turn, but the stabilizer is adding enough pressure that it's keeping it from spinning out of control.
Yeah.
So it flies a lot higher and stays in the air a lot longer. But there's probably still room for improvement. It was still turning quite a bit, and there were probably still quite a few turns left in the rubber when it landed. So if the stabilizer is just the right size and just the right shape, it could probably fly a lot longer and stay in the air a lot higher than it did even in that video. But it's all about experimenting. It's all about learning what materials and what sizes and what shapes of stabilizer are really going to work for your flying machine. So have fun with that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of different ways too. You can mess with the different kinds of rubber bands. Some of the commenters said they had a lot of snow on the ground, so hopefully that's melted off by now. You might have to go trudging through it to get your helicopter back. But like when we were flying those too, you had an indoor space, so you didn't have to worry so much about wind conditions and things like that. I'll say really quickly too that this competition style rubber, this is a very high quality rubber that we sent with the flight packs. You'll want to keep that lubricated if you want it to last. And what do I mean by lubricated, right? So maybe the easiest off-the-shelf solution that you can find wherever you're at is called Armor All. And it's used to kind of protect the surfaces inside vehicles typically. But it also works really well to protect this rubber band. It's going to add a lot of longevity to it. But the trick is you want to make sure to make your knots before it's been lubricated with that Armor All into one big loop. Otherwise, that knot will keep wanting to come loose because it doesn't have enough friction to hold itself there. But if you use some Armor All and some lubricant, they'll last a lot longer. Now, if you're doing things at home and you're making things happen, making it work with what you have, you can find a rubber band from like a Gwillows glider, like I showed earlier. Oftentimes these are these blue rubber bands, and those can work for this. You could even use some office supply rubber bands. Now, it's not going to have the same transfer of power or energy as some of the official stuff does, that rubber does. But you'll still have some success, and you'll be able to learn a lot of lessons.
That's some good advice. Because, one thing you don't want your rubber to do is you don't want it to dry out, and you don't want it to start cracking and have it just snap on you when you're trying to wind up your Rotorcraft.
It's definitely surprising.
Yeah.
And sometimes painful. So you got to be careful.
Yep. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this all wound up here.
Oh, you're going to give it a shot, huh?
Well, maybe not in the studio. I don't know if I want to take that risk.
No, I'm in my office. I could probably do it here, but I haven't been winding as long as you, so I don't think it's ready yet. Yeah. Oh well.
All right. Well, it looks like we're going to do it.
Oh,
I'm getting the thumbs up. I'm getting the thumbs up here. So we'll give it a shot here. Now, this stabilizer isn't very big, so maybe it won't stay in the air for a super long amount of time, but we'll find out here.
All right, you first.
All right, so just to demonstrate again, what you want to do is hold it kind of near the bottom here, between where the stabilizer is and the hook. And you want to release the rotor first, and then kind of give it that upward push when you're letting it go. So here we go.
There you go.
Not bad.
All right. I've been trying to seriously wind mine up. Let's see how this is. I'll try and back up.
Oh boy.
Wish me luck, man. Wish me luck. All right, so I'm going to let it go, and then I'm going to release it. Whoa! That worked pretty well. That was fun. And it's still got plenty of wine, so I bet if I went outside, I'd have a little bit more luck. It'd go around a little bit more.
All right, and that's what this time is for now. So once you've built your rotorcraft, once you've got all your materials together and put together the way that you want, and you have a stabilizer designed the way you want to design it, go out and test it and see what else you can make yours do, and see what kind of adjustments still need to be made. And hopefully that'll keep you busy until it is time to come back this afternoon at 3 p.m. for our 4th guest speaker.
And feel free to share those images on social media with your parents' permission. You can tag us by putting hashtag iFlyAMA, and we'll see those. And we have been seeing those. It's really fun to see your progress and your successes and even some failures every now and again. That's okay. That's how we learn. But it's really enjoyable for us to be able to see those. If you prefer to send a video or a photo or even just a story of how camp is impacting you guys in a positive way, feel free to send us an email at education@modelaircraft.org. We'll get those, and we love seeing them.
Absolutely. So go experiment, go have fun, and share what you've learned, and we will see you back here this afternoon at 3 p.m.